Hey there, I'm Deanna, host of the Esent Podcast, where we feature stories of early stage entrepreneurs about the trials and triumphs of launching and scaling startup ventures. Today, we're featuring an audio article about TiVo. You all remember TiVo, right? I mean, it was the first real change to the television industry since its inception. The concept seems so simple. With the TiVo remote, you could record, rewind, and pause live television. But the story of how TiVo came to be is fascinating, and we're going to uncover all of the ups and downs of TiVo's evolution right now. In the late 70s, Mike Ramsey moved to what he called Disneyland for technologists. He was, of course, talking about America. He came to the United States to work for HP, a company that was on the leading edge of technology at the time when there weren't even personal computers. He was fascinated by the way a person could manipulate a computer chip or a piece of hardware and change the way people could use that machine. It was his love of altering the status quo that led him to the world of technology. He recalls being surrounded by young, brilliant people like Bill Gates, who was just a quirky, nobody tech kid with a big idea. And he talks about how there's so much energy in the tech scene, so much momentum, it felt like nothing was impossible. As a founder, this is the only mindset you can have when it comes to business. Your industry, your idea, all of this mindset needs to be focused around the fact that there is nothing that is impossible. Any attitudes less than nothing is impossible will lead to failure 9 times out of 10. Every single day, people will tell you that it's not going to work, it's too expensive, it's impossible. Clients, investors, partners, but if you hold that nothing is impossible mentality and shoot it back at every doubting comment, you'll be on the track to success. In the mid 80s, Ramsey met Jim Barton at HP. They were working together on an internal team, but Ramsey was becoming increasingly unhappy working for a large corporation like HP. He was able to secure a job at a relatively small tech company called SGI, and he was overwhelmed by the amazing tech, brilliant people, and the culture in general. He joined soon after his interview, and Barton plus a few other HP employees joined with him. This shows a great level of entrepreneurial spirit and leadership on Ramsey's part. Not only was he willing to leave a big, comfortable company like HP, but he didn't have to work that hard to convince others to jump ship with him. Ramsey loved tech, but he didn't think that all tech jobs or fields were equally as interesting. At SGI, he hung around with movie and special effects people rather than the computer applications crowd because he considered the digital entertainment space to be not boring. Barton had been working in the video on demand space at SGI. At the time, they were calling it full service network, and even though Barton liked the space, his experience with the major players in the industry, which, were the cable companies and the telecom firms, it wasn't a good one. According to Ramsey, he felt like they were monopolies and they were going backwards. About a year after the project ended, Barton left SGI to start his own company. About a year after that, he got back in touch with Ramsey and they met for lunch to kick around ideas for a potential new business. It's worth noting that Jim Barton, the guy with all the technology experience here, left an established company to start his own business, but it wasn't until he got back in touch with his gregarious and passionate friend Ramsey that he was able to jumpstart what would ultimately become TiVo. This just goes to show that it helps to have a co-founder that fills in the crucial character and knowledge gaps. Solo founders can absolutely be successful on their own, but they have to understand what hard and soft skills they're missing and find a way to make up for these. So, the pair decided to tackle the home entertainment market. They didn't know exactly what problem they were solving, but they knew that the home network technology space, so they created a plan for how to move this new tech into consumers' homes and start pitching it to investors. Ramsey recollects, most people kicked us out because their ideal companies were ones that people come in and say, we have this idea, here's the market, here's the size, I want $5 million, I'll be profitable from day one, and I'll give you half my company. We came in and said, it's not like that in our case. When Ramsey and Barton were offering was a very different idea than what the traditional VC was buying at that time. No one was very, interested in capital intensive businesses. They also weren't interested in direct to consumer service based businesses, which meant that Ramsey and Barton had a hard time explaining why their business would be successful and having it accepted by the VCs. Some modern days examples of this business model are, Uber, Netflix, Grubhub, Caviar. They're all direct to consumer in the sense that they offer their value directly to consumers rather than going through a third party channel. And they're all service based businesses, which means they don't sell physical products. They provide you with a service and you pay for the convenience that they provide. So it would be as if the VCs at that time were saying, we just don't understand Uber. We just don't like Netflix. I don't see the point. We're not going to invest in it. That's what they were saying to Ramsey and Barton. So even with these major roadblocks in front of them, the duo was able to get two VCs to take them seriously. Stuart Alsop of NEA and Geoff Yang of Redpoint. Both these VCs were forward-thinking, excited by the space, and not very concerned about how much money they could make or how big the market was. They were just thinking it sounded like a good idea, they liked Ramsey and Barton, and the industry was interesting. And this is proof that a good idea and a great team can sell a vision to investors and get funding. Now that they had an idea and some funding, Ramsey and Barton had to figure out how to not only build the technology, but they also had the uphill battle of explaining this new invention to everyday people. Remember that they were developing a direct-to-consumer product, which means they weren't selling to companies who had a lot of knowledge around the home entertainment networking space. They were just trying to show regular consumers what the service was and why it was going to make their lives better. In order to get to that simple, easy to understand explanation, Ramsey and Barton had to go through that crucial first cut phase, where they recognized that they were working on too many things and that most of them were not valuable to the end consumer. This is a quote from Mike Ramsey. We said, look, we can't do everything, so let's just design a simple server based on, very low cost technology. Let's decide on one application that we think is the killer app, and let's just do that. The killer application that they decided on was a real-time TV manipulation application. Users would, in theory, be able to pause, rewind, and record live television. It was revolutionary at the time, and once the pair clicked on it, they doubled down. The problem was that their investors had given them money for a bigger and different idea. Another quote from Mike Ramsey says, "We went back to the VCs and said, thank you very much for the money. We've changed our minds. Here's what we're going to do, and here's why it's a good idea." And then the VC said, that sounds like a VCR. And anytime anyone says that to me, I go completely nuts. So we had this challenge of explaining it to everyone. Eventually, their financial backers got on board and they were able to continue innovating. They now faced a new challenge: how to actually build this dream magical TV box. In order to build what they envisioned, Ramsey and Barton needed to pull some technological strings and hire the best and the brightest. The only way they could get the price of the box down to a consumer-friendly level, which was roughly $200 in the 90s, they needed the top tech minds working on their project. But how would they get these brilliant engineers to leave their cushy, high-paying jobs and join their startup? This is one of the main challenges of starting a venture, especially one that is very technologically intensive. The tried and true advice is that if your startup is doing truly, something amazing, you should be able to, as the founders, sell the vision and get others on board and excited to join you. Ramsey and Barton were able to pull some strings and recruit some really smart people from their time at SGI. With everything seemingly in place, the pair was able to begin conceptualizing and building their vision. They knew it had to seamlessly work on any TV, and the technology had to be hidden from the consumer. They wanted the people at home to just think of it as a new kind of remote, because everyone understood how to use a remote to do things with TV. The only difference is, instead of changing the channels and adjusting the volume, they were introducing a way for people to pause, rewind, record, and manipulate live TV. After spending months delving deep into the technological aspects of what it takes to record, pause, and do these other things with TV, the team had to figure out how to integrate it with any capable provider a customer could have. And how to make it secure so no one could hack their device and see what someone else was watching. When they were finally ready to go to market, they named it TiVo and started selling their systems in tech retail stores. And this was way before Amazon, remember. Ramsey recollects that people kind of took it for granted. They hit the TiVo button, they got what they wanted, there's all this stuff going on in the background, but they had no idea what was going on. Now that the tech was taking off and the team was growing, the company needed more money. Ramsey and Barton had to go through 3 more rounds of funding before their IPO. Fundraising was, and always is, and will be, stressful because as the founder, you have to be on the front lines of that effort and you can't be in 2 places at the same time. It's tough to take a step back from the everyday operations of the company you built in order to get this funding to scale. Ramsey hired a successful investment banker named Dave Courtney to join as CFO, and this lifted a huge weight off his shoulders. Courtney was really good at raising money and enjoyed it, whereas Ramsey and Barton were tech and ops people. They had the intelligence to recognize that they needed to bring in a smart, talented person to take over this role so they could go back to doing what they were good at. This is the hallmark of truly great leadership in organizational efficiency. In September of 1999, TiVo IPO'd successfully, and the company was on the fast track to success from there. They were well funded, had a brilliant team, and had a great product. TiVo was getting a lot of great press, which was awesome because it was a direct-to-consumer product, so the more people that saw the name in the press, the more they were compelled to use it. Word of mouth was also a popular driver of growth because people want to tell others about what they're watching on TV. They always have, and they always will. The brand TiVo actually became a verb, like Google it. People would say, "Oh yeah, I TiVo'd Survivor last night, but I haven't watched it, so don't tell me what happened." The price of the TiVo box was higher than they had hoped for, and as a result, they weren't flying off the shelves. But Ramsey understood that in time, the manufacturing cost would come down and the price of the unit would follow. Ramsey is quoted as saying, "Everyone complained that we weren't going fast enough, and if the thing was so hot, why did it not just take off?" No business exists in a vacuum. Even if you're doing something highly technical and hard to replicate, eventually someone is going to figure out how to play on your field. TiVo had a scrappy competitor named Replay, and as the name suggests, they figured out how to pause, replay, and record live television just as TiVo did. According to Ramsey, the competition was all in good fun and there was no hatred, but they still wanted to stop the Replay guys from stealing their market share. Ramsey's quoted as saying, "If you're playing in a competitive game, you worry about winning the game. You're not thinking, oh, gee, I'm going to lose. You're thinking, how do I win?" And that's very much the spirit that we had. Microsoft even entered the in-home entertainment space, but gave up after investing hundreds of millions of dollars into a product and seeing almost no traction with it. TiVo had a name brand, and that was enough to put them in the lead and keep them there. The last hurdle TiVo had to overcome in the growth phase was the cable providers and satellite companies that didn't like this new invention. For the entire history of TV, the industry has been controlled by 3 or 4 main players. These companies have a stake in everything from the streaming of the television to the sales of the products sold in commercials. It was undoubtedly terrifying to go up against the telecommunication behemoths, but like David and Goliath, TiVo took them on and won. The company completed their major deal with Comcast and DirecTV, which helped them with their clash by partnering and becoming allies with the major TV providers. It's very often easier to work together with industry giants than to strategically move against them for the entire lifetime of the company. Founders who can put their ego aside will find a lot of opportunity in partnerships and mutual agreement. Here are some takeaways that I learned from this story of TiVo's early stages. TiVo was a monumental technological undertaking that started as just a cool idea one person had. So many founders have this moment when they see an opportunity to advance an industry using new technology, but when they think about everything that has to happen to realize their vision, raising funding, building a high-powered team, explaining the concept to people who don't get it, building the product, figuring out the business model, dealing with competition, and getting the product out there, they often decide that it's all just too hard. The truth is, it will be hard. But the other part of that truth is that it has been done before, and if you're passionate, you can get it done again. Building a company, especially a tech product focused one, is a constant uphill battle. But it's worth it because these kinds of innovations are the ones that change the world. Don't give up because it's hard. Remember what Ramsey taught us: nothing is impossible.